whenever you are undergoing any kind of a health crisis in your life, you want to include partners in that endeavor that share a common goal for you. Basically, what we're sharing with you tonight are some tools that you can add to your wellness and wellness toolbox for maintaining good health. And Thomas Edison was a very wise man in saying, the doctor of the future will give no medicine, but will instruct his patients in the care of the human frame, in diet, and the cause and prevention of disease. I'm looking at poke root to start with. So poke root is or poke flower, the poke plant. The part that's used are the roots, the leaves, and the berries. And this has a lot of toxins that are actually neutralized upon cooking. So after cooking, this can be a very beneficial herbal remedy, but you don't want to eat it uncooked because it can be toxic. So that's something that take into consideration. So the root can be used if it's gone after it's gone through 2 boilings and rinsings. So boil it, drain it, reboil it, and drain it again, and then it's ready to be used. You can use it in both the poultice and the tea forms. And actually, the poultice has been shown to be beneficial in advanced stages of breast cancer. So essentially, the technique that is recommended is grinding the fresh root into a fine mash. You can roll that into a plaster using some cheesecloth or thin cloth to kind of lay that on and do it over the breast, but leave the nipple area free. You can use that cheesecloth to kind of hold it in place over the abscessed area or the cancerous area, and then through the day it's going to dry out, and you can moisten it again with poke root tea. So use the fresh poke root tea and moisten it to kind of maintain its integrity throughout the day. And then at the end of the day, do it overnight. In the morning, you would replace that and have a new poultice of the crushed poke root, and do that for 15 days straight, moistening it about midday so that it can maintain its integrity throughout the course of the day. Then once you remove that after the 15 days, oftentimes it's noted that there'll be lots of small pus-filled blisters, so to speak, on the skin. But those are basically the skin eruptions of the cancerous material inside that's being drawn out by the poke root. It's basically a cleansing response. After 4 to 6 weeks, the tumor area, essentially the clustering of cells in the tumor area, that hardness should abate and leave. And then once that's happened, cleanse the skin with a boric acid powder solution or powder and allow it to dry. So it'll help dry it out. And then within 10 days after that, they should be completely dry and healed. So that can be a potential approach if, especially if there are no other options available. Certainly is a viable technique to look at. Comfrey can be beneficial too. So symphytum is a interesting plant. There are comfrey that you can grow. It's a very beautiful ornamental plant. Growing it wild, it can become quite invasive, but there are sterile varieties that you can grow by separating the roots as opposed to from the seeds. And those are more controllable and still have herbaceous or herbal qualities to them as well. You can use them as a tea or a decoction or powdered in a pill form. So the decoction is 1 ounce of roots per 1 quart of water, and you can drink that several times a day throughout the day. So in Schrotroya et al. In Carcinogenesis noted that comfrey, particularly poly-3,3,4-dihydroxyphenol glyceric acid from the comfrey, has an anti-cancer efficacy against human prostate cancer. It appears to target the androgen receptor, which androgen is a type of hormone. It's in the so one of the male hormones along with testosterone. and can arrest the cell cycle. Essentially, that's one of the things that is missing in cancer cells is their life termination. All cells recycle themselves and have a lifespan, and cancer cells notoriously do not. They just continue to grow and invade the tissue in which they're in. So this poly 3,4-dioxyphenyl glyceric acid is a component that has been pegged as, particularly in prostate cancer, as being beneficial from the comfrey plant. Interesting, iris can be beneficial too. Iris versicolor, so the blue iris or blue flag, the underground stem, the rhizome can be utilized. So it has some both stimulating and relaxing effects, can be useful in cancer situations. It can also aid in treatment of shingles and migraine headaches that have visual disturbances as a basis can also be benefited. So the rhizome itself can cause some irritation in usage, but you'd want to do some additional research on the blue flag as far as taking it. The naturopathic herbalist suggests the decoction of 1 teaspoon per cup of water twice a day, or the tincture at a 1:5 ratio, or 45% at 1 to 3 milliliters twice a day, as far as an intake of the blue iris. So it's a beautiful plant anyway, and if you have that in your garden, it could be a beneficial herb to have around at your disposal. Myrrh. Myrrh is not a local plant, but it is definitely a powerful plant resin from the myrrh tree. The resin is beneficial. The gums are what you're getting most of the qualities from. As an incense or even an essential oil from the myrrh can be used. So a tincture can be used for a gargle. You can use a tincture for a douche. And it's had a lot of medicinal properties, including aiding in cancer therapy. So it has a lot of indicated usages. One that is local is the Oregon grape, the wild Oregon grape, Berberis aquifolium. So the Berberis aquifolium is very ubiquitous here in the Pacific Northwest. The roots can be used very beneficially as a tonic and an alterative. Remember, a tonic is something that just maintains good body tone and organ tone. An alterative is something that brings a system of the body back into proper functioning when it's out of function. So both of those can be strong, slow actors. They're not rapid actors necessarily, and they can take some time to do that. Anything that's a blood purifier can be helpful because part of the thing that is necessary is having good circulation and pure blood flowing to all organs and tissues of the body. The leaves are they look like holly leaves, but they are in one plane. It's a small bush, and instead of having red berries like the holly does, it has grape-like leaves on it, hence Oregon grape. They're very, very sour. They make a good jam or jelly because you add sugar to jam or jelly. But sugar is actually something you want to stay away from, generally speaking, particularly if you have cancer, because that is something that cancers thrive on. But the young leaves that are up here where my arrow is actually are very soft and pliable and are a nice addition to salads. They're kind of an early spring addition to the plant. They can be plucked off and added to salads. They have a nice tart tang to them, so they probably have a pretty good level of vitamin C associated with them. Again, the various ways it can be used is the decoction. So a decoction, again, is taking a hard part of the plant, like a root, or in this case, the leaves that might be hard. These are actually waxy leaves, but the roots can be simmered for 20 minutes, and the decoction is using the fluid from that. And because it's not an infusion, because an infusion is a tea that's usually made from leaves or other softer parts of the plant. A tincture takes a little bit more time to prepare, but a 60% tincture 50 millimeters weekly maximum, and then in divided doses. And then your dried bark can be used too, 1 to 2 grams twice a day, or in a topical compress or lotion. They found that in the Oregon grape, they found a synergistic effect between berberine. Berberine is the active component that has been isolated out of the Oregon grape. Remember that berber is the genus name of the Oregon grape. And curcumin. Curcumin is one of the bioactive compounds in turmeric. So together, those two things have a synergistic anti-cancer and anti-tumor effect. And that was demonstrated in the 2015, not 2105, where you have a little ways off from there yet. So 2015 by Balakrishna et al. In Biomed International Journal. So some noted causes of cancer that particularly Jethro Kloss noted and others have noted over time, basically coming from 3 primary areas: the food that is eaten, often that's going to be refined in nature, animal-based. Secondly, the way it's prepared, so fried, free oils, high temperature. So high temperature baking, broiling creates polycyclic amines, which are components of browning. So anything over 400 degrees in an oven would tend to have that burning taking place, and those can produce carcinogenic compounds. Also, eating habits, irregular meals. So eating them kind of all over the place, or having lots of snacks in between, or even a few snacks, really, because it doesn't give your stomach a chance to rest and kind of recalibrate and begin its digestion process again, as well as the timing of those meals. So there's the diets that are causal tend to have a stomach irritation associated with them, which results in an ulcerative effect, and then can initiate a subclinical cancer, particularly stomach cancer. Stomach cancer is just one of many different types, but stomach cancer can go a long time unnoticed before it manifests itself, and it seems like a sudden manifestation of it. So food is a primary causation, but there's some other things that have come into play in recent years as well. Environmental toxins that we may be exposed to lower the immune system and lower the cell's ability to perform appropriately, as well as we have electrosmog, essentially from electromagnetic frequencies that our bodies are being more and more inundated with, particularly in urban areas, that can have cell alterative effects. So there are a variety of foods and herbs that have been noted. We've talked about many of them kind of as we've been moving along here over the last few weeks. But blue violet is one that has been noted a couple different times here. The whole plant, the root, the leaves, the blossoms are beneficial for usage in cancer treatment. So it's known to be curative when other living habits are made right. So in conjunction with turning around other living habits, dietary habits, other lifestyle habits that could be initiative precursors to cancer onset. So it's really imperative that the sufferer really dive deep into their lifestyle factors that could be contributors to the situation, change those, and then the things that you can do that God has provided can have a better opportunity to have a positive effect. So a tea from the leaves, ½ ounce to a pint of boiling water, steep those for 30 minutes and drink a cupful every 2 hours. You can also make hot fomentations from that same tea and use it over the area that's affected. So if it's a skin area or if it's an organ level area, you could use those fomentations on the surface over the area that is affected, and leave that fomentation in place until the cloth dries out. You can also use that tea as an enema, and use that. You can use that twice a day, morning and evening. A poultice can also be used of the chopped leaves. So take the violet leaves, chop them up, and steep them 30 minutes in boiling water, and take that mash and add flax meal to it to kind of help hold it together, and use that as a poultice over an affected area. So the blue violet can be a very beneficial adjunct to the way you're approaching a cancer situation. A couple others that are beneficial are agromony and ground ivy. So ground ivy is actually an invasive non-native species, but very prevalent in some places as a weed, really pretty blossoms. But those two are beneficial in aiding and drying up and healing skin cancers. So those would be in, like, again, wash forms or poultice forms. On the bottom, we have the leaf and root pictured of a Chinese herb that's been used for over 5,000 years for cancerous situations. Polygonum multiflorum, known as Hoshu Wu or Fo Ti. It's actually in the buckwheat family, and that has been used. And there's actually a fair bit of research out there that supports this plant's usage for the situation. So Jethro Kloss is where a lot of this is coming from. Some of it's pulled from modern research as well. But he first published his book Back to Eden back in 1939, and it's been published fairly continuously with new editions coming along. I think an edition that I have is 1988. But when he started looking at cancer himself, he took for granted that there was no cure, but he wanted to understand what was the underlying basis of the situation. And he looked at the countries where cancer was prolific, and the things that he noted was that it was prolific in the civilized nations. And the commonality that he found in the civilized nations was large amounts of meat were consumed. And so that's often associated with affluence, because meat is an expensive food source. It's energetically expensive, it's resource intensive, and also resource exploitive and resource contaminating. So it's really a source of protein and food that has a lot of energy requirements going into it for what you get out of it. So basically, you're a tertiary or a quaternary consumer as opposed to a primary consumer. So those who consume plants are consuming things as close to its original form, rather than having the plants processed through 2 or 3 levels to get to the consumption. Also, they noticed that they consume rich and luxurious foods. So what makes foods rich and luxurious? Well, it's a high percentage of fat, free fats that are used in the cooking of it, frying, deep fat broiling, high sugar content together make those foods luxurious. So essentially what they were seeing is a term that's been coined today called the modernization disease syndrome, which essentially is a collection of different diseases of affluence. Essentially, diabetes is a disease of affluence. Cancer apparently is a disease of affluence. And there are others as well. Heart disease could fall into that as well. On the other hand, developing nations consume plain, natural, whole foods, and cancer was very rare to non-existent. And it was noted that upon, quote, civilization, and what that meant was that higher consumption of meat became into play, as well as more rich and luxurious foods began to be consumed. As that affluence came, the civilization came to quotes, developing nations, cancer followed soon thereafter. So that really kind of pigeonholes and connects the dots to a causal factor to that the sources of food as being sources of cancer initiation. So found that it was thought that that high meat-based diets were causal in cancer, but he also noted that there were people who consumed meat who were cancer-free, and that's always kind of a bit confounding. He also noticed that there were people who were largely plant-based, but they developed cancers. And what he discovered was that some key factors to that was the fact that those who, on either side of the fence, those who ate meat as well as those who were plant-based, the food that they were eating was refined and processed largely, or bad food combinations that resulted in lots of body waste of one form or another in trying to process it. And in the combination or in the process of that, stressing the organs of the body, and organs under continuous stress begin to manifest disease. So essentially, foods that are refined are stripped of their vitamin and mineral contents, as well as their living enzymes. And those are essentially the life-giving properties that God put in those plants for our benefit. They help maintain pure blood, maintain strong nerves. Essentially, refining is a process that manufacturers have used to increase the shelf life of the food substance. So, for example, cornmeal has a better shelf life if it's been degerminated, because the germ portion is the portion that has the oils in it that'll go rancid the quickest. White flour will have a shelf life a lot longer than whole wheat flour, because the whole wheat has the germ associated with it, which has the oils which go rancid over time. And so the extension of the shelf life was the key component. And then, of course, as they took it apart, they would then enrich it. After stripping it away, it'd be like taking away from somebody a $100 bill and essentially stealing it from them, and then giving them back $75 and say that you have been enriched. You've been enriched with what? Not the whole, but a part of the whole. They've still taken something away. So enriched flour has niacin, riboflavin, and maybe another vitamin or two added to it to enrich it, because it was there to start with, along with other beneficial cofactors that were stripped away during the refining process. It's true for rice. It's true for most grains, and sugar, salt actually has a refining process that it goes through too. The best type of salt to use is a sea salt, either Redmond sea salt or Celtic sea salt. Sea salts have a wide variety of minerals associated with them that regular table salt does not. In fact, you'll find if you look at the ingredients list of regular table salt, it often has dextrose or other flow agents added to it, in addition to sodium chloride. So with the sea salt, you have a broad spectrum of minerals that are much closer to those that are needed by the human body. In fact, it's very close to the mineral composition of the blood.